Today's deep dive is into a specific story that honestly feels like it was written by a screenwriter. It connects two completely different worlds. On one side, you have this massive current obsession in North America with biohacking, GLP-1, and metabolic health.
And on the other side, you have a dusty red dirt road in the subtropical rainforests of Argentina.
And at the center of the story is a protagonist who defies every single stereotype you might have of a startup founder.
Right, because we're so used to hearing about, 22-year-old guys in hoodies in Silicon Valley trying to disrupt breakfast.
Today, our hero is Maria Magdalena Glinka. She is an 80-year-old grandmother. And she didn't just decide to brew a nice cup of tea. She resurrected a dead family business and an ancestral manufacturing method that the modern industry had basically abandoned.
The brand she launched is called Amanecer Campero, which roughly translates to Country Dawn. And to understand why this matters, why we're dedicating this entire deep dive to one small producer, you have to understand that not all yerba mate is created equal.
That was the real aha moment for me in the sources. I always thought yerba was just, well, yerba. You buy the yellow bag, you put it in the gourd, you drink it. But apparently there is a massive chasm between the industrial stuff and what Maria is doing.
It's basically the difference between a loaf of mass-produced white bread and a traditional sourdough that's been fermenting for 3 days. The nutritional profile, the chemical effect on your body, and the taste are completely distinct.
So let's travel to the source. We are going to Apóstoles in the province of Misiones, Argentina. They call this place the national capital of yerba mate. Paint the picture for us. What does this place actually look like?
If you've never been to Misiones, the very first thing that hits you is the color of the ground. It isn't brown. It is this violent, bright red.
Like Mars.
Almost exactly like Mars. It's lateritic soil. It's incredibly rich in iron and aluminum, which is actually why it rusts. Literally rusts, giving it that vibrant red color. And that iron content is crucial because it pumps nutrients directly into the plants.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And historically, this region is a fascinating melting pot. You have the indigenous Guarani people who originally discovered and cultivated the plant.
Oh, right. I always forget that part. This wasn't some colonial invention.
Not at all. The Guarani used it for centuries as a stimulant and a daily nutritional supplement. But then, in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, you had this massive wave of immigration from Eastern Europe, Poland, Ukraine.
Right.
They arrived, saw this intense red earth, and basically applied their intense agricultural work ethic to the native Guarani crops.
That is such a specific, wild cultural mashup. Pirages and tropical rainforests.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that exact mashup is the lineage of Maria Magdalena Glinka and her husband, Roberto Sanavieski. For decades, they were what you'd call smallholders. They owned a mill and about 15 to 25 hectares of plantation.
So they weren't famous. They were just sort of a cog in the machine.
Right. They harvested their leaves and sold the raw material to the massive cooperatives.
Like Playa Dito. I see those yellow bags everywhere now.
Exactly like that. They were just suppliers for the industrial giants. And for a long time, that was enough. It was a solid living until the crisis hit.
And this is where the story gets heavy. Because this wasn't a market crash or a bad harvest season. This was deeply personal.
Roberto, Maria's husband, fell ill. It was serious enough that he was ultimately confined to a wheelchair. And you have to understand, on a small family farm, the physical presence of the owners is everything.
Yeah, it's not like they could just hire a CEO to take over the day-to-day operations.
No, when Roberto couldn't work the mill, everything just stopped. The silence in that place must have been deafening. They had to shut down the mill entirely. For 6 or 7 years, that machinery just sat there.
And in a humid subtropical climate like Misiones, 6 years is an eternity.
Metal rusts quickly. Belts rot. Nature just starts reclaiming the buildings.
It's essentially a ghost ship.
It is. And usually that's where the story ends. The land gets sold off, the machinery gets scrapped for parts, and the family legacy disappears. But in 2018, something shifted. Maria was 80 years old. Her husband had passed away. Most people at that age are looking to downsize. They're looking for comfort.
Maybe taking up knitting, watching some daytime TV. But not Maria.
Not Maria. She woke up one day and told her son, Walter, I want to get ahead. I want to process our own yerba again. She didn't want to just sell the raw leaves anymore. She wanted to make her own product under her own name.
And Walter, the son, I have to side with him initially. He must have thought she was completely out of her mind.
He was definitely the voice of financial reality. He looked at the rusting mill and said, Mom, we can't do this. The cost of modern machinery is prohibitive. To buy a new industrial dryer, which uses gas or wood chips and huge motors, costs an absolute fortune. They just didn't have that kind of capital lying around.
Which brings us to what I think is the absolute best part of this story, the miracle of the drum. Because they needed a dryer, right? You literally cannot make yerba mate without drying the leaves first.
Correct. Specifically, they needed a rotating cylinder for a system called barbacoa. We'll get into the technical side of what that means in a second, but just know it requires a big metal drum.
Okay.
So Walter hears a rumor that a neighbor in a nearby town, Cerro Azul, is upgrading his mill. This neighbor has an old, small-scale drum sitting in his yard, basically just growing weeds.
So Walter drives over there, and I'm just imagining the pit in his stomach. He knows they have zero budget. He's probably rehearsing his speech in the car, trying to figure out how to ask for a 5-year payment plan.
He walks up to the neighbor, asks how much for the drum, and he's bracing himself, expecting a number that ends the dream right then and there.
What happens?
The neighbor looks at him and says, 15,000 pesos.
Okay, for you listening who might not be following the wild saga of the Argentine peso exchange rate, that is basically nothing, right?
It was entirely symbolic. It was roughly the price of a nice dinner out for a family. It was effectively free. The neighbor told him, I'm charging you this so I can say I sold it, not gave it away. But I want you to have it. I want you to succeed.
That gives me chills. That is rural solidarity in action.
The neighbor knew the mill had been silent for 7 years. He wanted to help turn the lights back on for them. It's a beautiful moment. So they haul this rusty iron giant back to Apóstoles. They don't even have a proper industrial electric motor to turn the thing, so they literally rig it up to the power takeoff of a tractor.
La-Tech high heart.
Exactly. And that is exactly how Amanecer Campero was born. But here's the kicker. Because they were forced to use this old, scavenged equipment, they couldn't do the fast industrial drying even if they wanted to. They had to use the ancestral method. They had to use the barbacoa system.
Okay, let's unpack this term. We've said the word barbacoa a few times now. It sounds a lot like barbecue, which obviously implies smoke.
Yeah.
What is the actual technical difference between this and the mass market industrial stuff?
This is the crucial differentiator for anyone drinking mate. If you buy a standard bag at a supermarket, that leaf was likely dried in about 2 to 4 hours using extreme high heat. They blast it with hot air from gas or wood chips. It's a flash dry process.
Which is very efficient, fast turnaround.
Extremely efficient for the bottom line, but it's harsh. It shocks the cellular structure of the leaf. Now, the barbacoa method is the ancient Guarani technique. It is a slow, gentle dehydration process over a wood fire. At Amanecer Campero, the leaves are in that dryer for 25 to 30 hours.
Wait, hold on. 2 hours versus 30 hours. That is wildly inefficient from a business standpoint.
It is terrible for business efficiency, yes, but it is absolute magic for quality. Think about cooking meat. You can microwave a steak in 3 minutes, or you can smoke a brisket for 12 hours. Which one tastes better? Which one is more tender?
Point taken. The brisket every single time.
And the heat source matters just as much as the time. They use specific wood eucalyptus.
Why eucalyptus? Isn't that just the stuff koalas eat?
It is, but in this context, it's chosen because it burns incredibly clean.
Huh.
If you use pine or resonant woods, you get this thick, black, acrid smoke that makes the yerba taste bitter and aggressive. Eucalyptus imparts a very gentle, woody aroma without that harsh bite.
And there's a specific person who actually manages this fire, right? It's not just a computer setting a thermostat.
No, this is where the uru comes in. The uru is the master dryer. It's a job title that sounds almost mystical. This person has to stay awake through the night, monitoring the fire, manually turning the leaves, smelling the smoke to gauge the progress.
Wow.
It requires deep intuition. You can't automate it because the humidity of the raw leaf changes, the density of the wood changes. The uru just have to feel it.
So you have a 30-hour smoke bath managed by a master artisan, but they still aren't done yet, are they? After the drying, they don't just bag it and ship it to supermarkets?
No. Doing that would be a crime against the process. After drying, the yerba is considered raw. It's called yerba quinchada. If you brewed it right then, it would be incredibly bitter and sharp. It needs to age. This is the estacionamiento phase.
Do industrial brands do this aging too?
They do, but again, time is money. Industrial aging is often artificially accelerated in heat chambers and lasts anywhere from 30 to maybe 60 days, just barely enough to make it palatable. Amanecer Campero ages their yerba naturally in a temperature-controlled warehouse for 24 months.
2 years. They literally sit on their inventory for 2 years before seeing a single dime of profit.
Correct. And chemically, a profound amount happens in those 2 years. The tannins, which are the natural compounds that create astringency and bitterness, they oxidize and mellow out. The flavor profile transforms from grassy and sharp to woody, slightly sweet, and caramelized.
Is this why some people say yerba mate gives them awful heartburn? I've had friends try it once and say it felt like battery acid in their stomach.
That is almost certainly because they drank a young or rapidly dried industrial yerba. The acidity in green, fast-dried yerba is very high. But after 24 months of natural oxidation, that acidity drops off a cliff. It essentially becomes alkaline. Amanecer Campero is famous among connoisseurs for never causing acidity.
So if you've been burned by mate before, literally and figuratively, this is the way back in.
Exactly. And the main visual sign of this quality is the espumo, the foam. When you pour water on this properly aged barbacoa yerba, it creates a thick, creamy foam that lasts through multiple pours. Industrial mate foams up once and then disappears in seconds.
It's incredible to think this 80-year-old woman is orchestrating this whole slow-motion symphony. And she's getting recognized for it now, right? This isn't just some local secret anymore.
It's definitely making waves. In 2023, the Ministry of Agro and Production of Misiones officially awarded Maria the Orden del Mate.
The Order of the Maid. I really want that on my resume.
It's a huge honor in that region. It was specifically part of the Mujeres Industrial Women Awards. And what I love most is that the official citation specifically mentioned that she isn't just a figurehead. She isn't just sitting in an office looking at spreadsheets. She is out there horquiller.
What does horquiller mean?
It means using a pitchfork to manually turn the leaves. She's 80, nearing 85 now, and she is physically out there moving piles of yerba mate with a pitchfork. She helps with the packaging. She manages the books.
That is the absolute definition of resilience. And I understand they're also pretty strict about the farming side of things, too.
Very strict. They are fully agroecological, no poisons, no synthetic fertilizers whatsoever. They do all their weed control by hand or with a hoe. And they practice what you'd call small-scale exclusivity. They only produce about 3,000 kilograms a year from their own crop.
3,000 kilos is nothing on a global scale. That's a true microbatch.
It ensures they don't overfarm the soil. They aren't buying cheap, low-quality leaves from other farms just to bulk up their volume. It is 100% estate-grown.
Okay, so we have this amazing story. We have the artisanal method, but I want to pivot to the why. Why should you, listening to this deep dive in Toronto or Chicago or London, care about these dried leaves from Argentina? We mentioned biohacking earlier. Let's get into the actual science of what this stuff does to the human body.
This is where ancient ancestral wisdom perfectly meets modern lab science. We all know yerba mate has caffeine, about 80 milligrams per cup, which is roughly equivalent to a standard cup of coffee. But if you talk to anyone who drinks it regularly, they will tell you the high is completely different.
Yeah, I've heard people describe it as cleaner, less jittery. Is that just a placebo effect from drinking out of a cool gourd?
No, it's purely chemistry. It's
Yeah.
what we call the entourage effect. In coffee, caffeine is basically the soloist. In yerba mate, caffeine is part of a choir, and the most important partner in that choir is a compound called theobromine.
Wait, that's the compound in dark chocolate, right?
Exactly. Now, here is the physiological mechanism. Caffeine is a vasoconstrictor. It tends to narrow your blood vessels, which can increase your blood pressure and cause that tight, jittery, anxious feeling we associate with too much coffee. Theobromine, on the other hand, is a vasodilator. It actively relaxes the blood vessels and increases blood flow.
So they basically balance each other out in real time.
Perfectly. You get the central nervous system stimulation from the caffeine, the wake-up signal to your brain. But the theobromine keeps the blood flow smooth and relaxes the physical muscular tension. It creates a state of alert wakefulness. You can focus intently, but your hands aren't vibrating.
That perfectly explains why it's become so popular with med students and software coders. But there's another massive buzzword we need to tackle today, GLP-1. I see this everywhere in the news right now because of drugs like Ozempic. People online are saying yerba mate is nature's Ozempic. Is that actually responsible to say?
We definitely need to be nuanced here. Yerba mate is obviously not a synthetic drug, and it's not going to have the drastic, immediate effect of a pharmaceutical injection. However, the underlying mechanism is completely real. Recent clinical studies have shown that specific compounds in yerba mate actually stimulate the body's endogenous secretion of GLP-1.
Okay, break that down for us. What is GLP-1 actually doing in the body?
GLP-1 stands for glucagon-like peptide 1. It is a hormone naturally produced in your gut. It does two main things. First, it tells your brain, I am satisfied, stop eating. And second, it slows down gastric emptying.
Which means food stays in your stomach longer.
Exactly. So you physically feel fuller for a longer period. When you drink yerba mate, you are gently nudging your body to release more of this hormone naturally. So it acts as a natural metabolic supporter. It helps with fat oxidation, burning fat for fuel instead of carbs. And it effectively curbs your appetite.
So it's not magic, it's just signaling your body to do what it already knows how to do.
Precisely. It's a tool. If you're trying to intermittent fast, or you're just trying to not snack mindlessly between meals, yerba mate is an incredible ally because of that sustained satiety signal.
And on top of the focus and the metabolic support, you're getting a pretty serious vitamin cocktail, right?
They don't call it the drink of the gods for nothing. It's absolutely loaded with chlorogenic acid, which is a highly potent antioxidant that protects your cells from damage. It has saponins, which actively boost the immune system. And get this, studies have shown that regular drinkers have 10% greater bone density than non-drinkers, even without extra exercise.
10%, that's huge. Usually caffeine leaches calcium from your bones.
That's very true for coffee and soda. But yerba mate seems to have a unique protective effect on bone mass. It's fascinating.
Okay, so I am completely sold on the story, and I'm definitely sold on the science. But I have a practical hurdle here. I look at the traditional way of drinking it. The hollowed-out scrosh, the special metal straw, carrying a thermos under your arm everywhere you go. It looks, well, complicated and, frankly, a little intimidating for a beginner. Do I have to do the full traditional ritual to actually enjoy Amanecer Campero?
This is probably the best news for you listening right now. Because Amanecer Campero is such high quality, because it's aged for 2 whole years and has very low dust content, you do not need the gourd and bombilla. You can basically treat it exactly like premium loose leaf tea.
So I could just use a French press?
A French press is absolutely perfect. In fact, for a beginner, it might actually be better. You just put in a few tablespoons of the yerba, add water that is hot, but definitely not boiling. You want to aim for about 80 degrees Celsius, let it steep for 4 or 5 minutes, and then plunge it.
And it won't be overwhelmingly bitter.
Because of the slow barbacoa drying and the 2-year aging, it will be incredibly smooth, woody, and almost naturally sweet. If you tried that exact method with a cheap, unaged industrial brand, it would taste like battery acid. But with this artisanal product, it works beautifully.
What about in the summer? It's getting pretty hot where I am. Can we ice this?
Absolutely. In Paraguay and the northern parts of Argentina, this is culturally huge. It's called tereré. It's essentially the cold brew version. The smoky, complex profile of the barbacoa is amazing when paired with ice water. Throw in some fresh mint leaves, maybe a slice of lemon or grapefruit. It is arguably the most refreshing thing you can drink on a hot day.
I love that. It's so versatile. So the million-dollar question, how do we actually get our hands on this? I assume a tractor-powered mill on a dirt road in the rainforest doesn't exactly have 2-day prime shipping.
You would actually be surprised. We are living in the absolute golden age of global logistics. This is what we call a third-wave beverage product. Just like we saw with specialty coffee moving from giant tins of Folgers to single-origin artisanal beans. There are now specialized e-commerce platforms like Pampa Direct or Latinify that ship these micro-batch products globally.
So I can be sitting in an apartment in Brooklyn or Berlin, and I can order a bag of leaves that Maria literally turned with her pitchfork.
You can. It connects the dots perfectly across the globe.
Yeah.
You have the sheer resilience of this 80-year-old woman in rural Argentina directly fueling the modern focus and metabolic health needs of people in North America and Europe.
It really is a beautiful loop. We started this deep dive talking about a caffeinated drink, but we really ended up talking about time.
I think that's the ultimate takeaway here. We live in a world obsessed with fast food, fast fashion, instant gratification, same-day delivery. Amanecer Campero is, in its own way, a rebellious act of slow.
You just can't fake 30 hours of wood fire.
And you certainly can't fake 24 months of waiting in a warehouse. In a way, when you drink this, you are tasting patience. You are tasting the deliberate decision to do something the hard way, simply because it's the right way.
And you're actively supporting a legacy. Every time someone buys a bag online, they are proving that neighbor who sold the drum right. They are helping Maria keep the lights on and the fires burning.
And hopefully it inspires us to find the barbacoa approach in our own lives. What is the thing you are working on that is actually worth doing slowly?
I love that final thought. That's something to really chew on. If we apply that 2-year patience to our own health, our own projects, maybe we'd all have a little less burnout and a lot more quality. I'm going to go a French press of this right now and think about exactly that. Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Yerba Mate. And remember, if you order some, it's mate, not mate.
Enjoy the slow brew.
We'll catch you in the next one.